Lifestyle Pirates with Big J and Adriano.
Okay, good morning and good evening to our listeners here at Lifestyle Pirates. We are greeted here. We've actually have our first Zoom session today with an overseas guest, Mark Livings, the co-founder and CEO of Lyres. How are we, Mark? Good morning.
Very well, John. Thank you for having me on, and good morning to you. Good evening, I should say, if you're tucked in safe and sound in Sydney.
Mate, we're tucked in. We're very warm.
Well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. So we've been hearing a lot about Lyres over here in Australia. We're actually got a few of the RTDs going at the moment. I've got the Amalfi Spritz and we've got the Prosecco because we didn't get to travel to Italy this year. Adriano's particularly upset.
Very upset.
Mate, talk to us about Lyres. What is it?
Sure. So we are now the world's most awarded range of non-alcoholic alcohol alternatives. We have a range of 13 spirits. And as you two gentlemen are enjoying, and what's exclusive in Australia at the moment, is you have some of the world's first RTDs in a non-alcoholic format. So our breadth of 13 spirits allows anyone to make 42 of the world's top 50 cocktails in a completely non-alcoholic format. So we make homages to things like bourbon, gin, rums. We have 2 vermouths, a dry and a sweet Rosso. And we also have a number of liqueurs as well. And in the RTDs, we have homages to the classic British Indian cocktail, the G&T, the beautiful Italian sparkling Prosecco with our Classico, and of course, the quintessential Italian spritz, we have our Amalfi Spritz. So I do hope you're enjoying, and we're incredibly proud of what we've achieved to date with the business.
Mate, they're very nice.
Yeah,
and I only
fantastic.
learned the other day what an RTD was. I looked very stupid.
So what is an RTD?
It's a ready to drink.
Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, funny. And then a can of Coke is an NARTD, a non-alcoholic RTD.
All right.
And then there's been the emergence of a new category called RTS, which is ready to serve. So particularly important for things like still cocktails, where you can pour yourself a pre-bottled Negroni, for example.
Yep.
But you have to pour it over ice and garnish it yourself. And that's a ready to serve drink.
Mate, you had me at Negroni.
Yeah. Do you guys do a Negroni?
We can with 3 of our variants. So our Dry London Spirit, which is our homage to gin, our Aperitif Rosso, which is our sweet vermouth, and of course our Italian Orange, which is our homage to the great Italian bitters.
Now, Mark, you're in Amsterdam at the moment, which we'll come back to. But being an Aussie, Aussies are, we've got a big drinking culture over here. So, you would have grown up in that as well. How did Lyres come about, as this non-alcoholic drink?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm often asked by my European, American, Asian compatriots, what the hell is an Aussie doing founding a non-alcoholic spirits company? So look, for us, it was a bit of an interesting challenge for us initially. So my background is I have a marketing background. I started my career with Coca-Cola, moved to the agency side of the business, and then founded my own agency about 11 years ago with a co-founder. Big shout out to Mick Hall if he's listening. Love you, brother. Miss your face. Mick and I have been running that agency for about 11 years, and we've looked after exclusively multinational consumer goods businesses. So we touch over 50 of them in Australia. And that business, we've had an extraordinary run. The Brandlink Group, it's now called, it's been one of the fastest growth businesses in Australia for the last 4 years, which I think is record equaling on the AFR Fast 100. So go Mick and Mark. But what we realised is that having such amazing proximity to our customers, we could see, well, not only did we learn how to do their business via osmosis, but through an entrepreneur's lens. But we could also start to see opportunities that they were not capitalizing on or didn't think had any merit at the time. And so being a marketing agency, consumer insights and consumer trends, that's our meat and bread. So we're seeing this incredible push, this massive tailwind of health, wellness, and lifestyle. And it's driving all of these other categories forward. So I think I guess infamously, do you remember wheatgrass shots were everywhere about 10 years ago and then they disappeared?
Yeah.
That was sort of the beginning trend. Now, good luck to you trying to find wheatgrass. But now you've got oat milk as an alternative to your dairy. You've got Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat as alternatives to your Big Mac or your Whopper. And of course, you can now choose to vape instead of smoke. So there's all of these things that are healthier or perceived healthier by the consumer that are disrupting traditional industries. So we saw the spirits industry and we saw how mocktails were made in the on-trade. And we also saw that there was this trend for people to start recreating on-trade experiences in the home. So we thought there was an incredible opportunity to try our hand at building non-alcoholic spirits. And the one thing that we could do is we could solve for the outside the bottle. So here's one of our RTD cans. So we could brand it, we could store it, we could ship it, we could market it and advertise it, but we couldn't get the liquids right. We didn't know how to make what's inside the can. So that began a journey of discovery. I've now learnt more about chemistry, food and beverage science, manufacturing and scaling a consumer business globally than I ever thought I would. But our journey there took me to the office of a good friend of mine in Australia, Peter Gates. And Pete's a bit of a beverage whiz. He works for a German beverage technology company. And we started the process with them, and it took us about 3 years, and we quite literally went around the world about 3 times building this range of products. I ended up tapping in a good friend of mine, David Murphy, from Sydney-based restaurant in Summer Hill, One Penny Red. Shout out to Murph if he's listening as well. And Murph's a hell of a sommelier with a palate and a nose and an ability to describe what's in a beverage or missing from a beverage, most importantly for us,
right?
Like no one else. So I did okay. I got them to a point, and then I tapped Murph in, and then the magic sort of happened, and we ended up building these beautiful liquids. And as I mentioned before, they're now the most awarded in the world. We have more than 80 international blind tasting spirits award competition medals. We own the very auspicious title of the greatest non-alcoholic spirit in the world with our Amaretti, which received 98 points, or a very, very difficult to get sublime rating in the International Wine and Spirits Awards last year. And once we got our liquids right, we set to scaling this business, and we're now available in more than 35 countries globally, from mainland China to the Caribbean. And we now sell direct to consumer in more than 20 countries. So it's been an extraordinary 4-year journey, maybe 5 now. And it's been an amazing thing to be at the helm of the whole way through.
I mean, that's not a long period of time, is it? 4.5 years to have achieved what you've done in the countries. This blending all the spirits, getting it out there, the promotion, the distribution. I mean, how much learning? I mean, you've given a shout out to a few people. They've obviously helped you on your journey.
Yeah.
But how much was there for you? And was it connections, or was it learned by discovery? How did you do that?
It's a bit of both. The biggest shout out of all I've left for my co-founder, Carl Hartman, pretty profile Australian entrepreneur from the logistics technology sector. He and I go all the way back to university when we were drinking irresponsibly and doing silly things.
Man, I think we all did at university, don't worry.
Oh, of course, rite of passage, all that. Not that it makes it cool, but yeah, kids these days are far wiser than we were, that's for sure. But Carl and I, if you put our networks together, they're pretty considerable. And I think one of the things that determines the outcome of a startup early on is the quality of the cap table that it's able to put together. So we were able to attract, off the quality of our liquids, we were able to attract a pretty extraordinary chairperson, Greg Bundy, who's the former CEO of Merrill Lynch Australia. And we're able to attract some fairly significant and highly influential investors, including Andrew Banks, who's, I guess, famous as one of the sharks from Australia's Shark Tank, but is also an extraordinary business person and a gentleman to boot. having scaled Monster and had more than one very significant exit in his career. So, Andrew's been extraordinary for us, and we've managed to raise capital for this business on the way through that's entirely smart money. So that's sort of helped us along. But one of the most important things is the business model that we landed on. We have, now validated a great product, or we knew we had a great product at the time, but we knew that there was an incredible benefit to being a first mover and to scaling very quickly. And I'd long held the thought that if you ran a consumer products company like a Silicon Valley style tech business, you could get the same results. So there's actually a book called Blitzscaling, and that sort of became our business Bible. And it has a few basic tenets that, would seem familiar to those of you who are familiar with the startup sector. And that's prioritize speed over efficiency. So, grow revenue at all costs, the profitability will come. Hire extraordinary people at the top of the game. So look to build a team of Navy SEALs, not a massive army of, fairly competent regulars. You want super sharp people that are amazing to work with. And then most importantly, accountability needs to live at the edge with execution. So you empower those people, you trust their experience, and you bake into the business the ability for it to move incredibly rapidly and to scale faster than any global multinational can, and any resource poor SME could also. So that's been our sort of strategy. And at the end of this, very long hypothesis, we find ourselves here now with the results that we've achieved to date by following it. So I think I might write a book about this at the end, or hit the speaking circuit. I don't know, but there's certainly amazing things to learn by looking at Silicon Valley, because it's been the most iterative creator of business models for the last 30 years. It's had so many startups and failures, and then fine tuning of the business model moving forward, that it's arguably the blueprint for what the best business model is for a fast scaling business.
Yeah, and I can imagine we only hear about the success stories. We don't hear about the ones that do fail.
Yeah, that's where the greatest learnings are.
Yeah. So why now for non-alcohol based drinks? Why are we seeing this exponential kind of growth? Why are we seeing the consumers taking it up on it? I mean, there's been non-alcoholic beer for a long time. I think there's been some dodgy non-alcoholic wines. Yeah. Why now?
Look, it's a confluence of a few things. The first is the health and lifestyle trend, which I've spoken about. I'll just expand on that very briefly. What's really interesting about the trend is that it transcends cultures. You can find exactly the same trend in Shanghai. It also transcends income stratas. So you've got, some of the poorest people in the world, or people living hand to mouth or within a market, all the way through to some of the most wealthy, all with the same concerns about quality of life, longevity, and what they're putting in their bodies. So that's become a mega trend, as we like to call it, and that's completely reshaping the consumer brands landscape. So that's number one. And then the second part of that confluence is we now have technology that's unlocked better non-alcoholic alternatives in both beer, wine, and of course spirits like we are. So the technology's come a very, very long way in a very short time. Without getting too crazy and talking to you about, reverse osmosis or spinning cone technology for dealcoholization, there's lots of really, really cool equipment out there that leaves the flavors or the perfumes or the original form of the beer, wine, or spirit intact, whilst removing the alcohol and not severely impacting the flavor. So that technology has become available. And then the last part of that confluence of trends is, and really interesting from a marketing perspective, gender convergence is one of those things that's a symptom of this broader trend. Humans, for the most part, are becoming more transparent, empathetic, and expecting the same thing from the businesses that they buy products from. But gender convergence is particularly important, and that's just to quickly unpack that and define it. That's where females take on traditional male qualities, such as the ability to assert themselves, the self-confidence to start a business, to become a community leader or a political spokesperson, etc. And then on the other side, gender convergence is men are becoming more sensitive, men are more in touch with their emotions and happy to talk about them. And the word toxic masculinity is bandied around a lot, but it's the shedding of destructive behaviours that really belong to the generation where, little boys were told that they got hit by their dad and then told boys don't cry. We've slowly moved away from that over the last couple of generations, and we're finding that humanity is converging in the middle. And, whilst there's still a way to go, men and women are being seen as equals, and both are shedding some of the things that are less desirable about their gender's traditional roles in society. So with men in particular, if you were drinking a non-alcoholic beer, you were paid out. If you were caught drinking, especially a non-alcoholic spirit, you were paid out. If you dared order a cocktail with an umbrella in it, you were paid out as well. So it's a confluence of those three things: the big health and lifestyle megatrends, manufacturing technology, and a significant cultural change in what it is to be a man or be a woman across the developed world.
And for our non-Aussie listeners, paid out means taking the mick out of, maybe having some jokes made against you. Just conscious of the...
Is that an Aussie phrase?
Yeah.
Oh, right,
just conscious of the POMs, and our American listeners.
So you and John mentioned that, non-alcoholic beverages have been done before. So when you wanted to start up this, or you and your other founder wanted to start this up, were you met with any adversity or any doubt in the product when you were starting it up? Or did you have any doubt?
For sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when you start the process, you get your first few, you try your first few times, and it's not great.
Yeah.
And it's an expensive exercise to do product development.
I'd imagine it would be.
Yeah, so when we're like 24 months in and they're still not right, and you're looking at all the money that you spent, and you're looking at all the time you put into it, and going, have I misstepped here? Have I attempted to tackle the impossible?
Yeah.
You do have those moments of doubt, and you do have those dark moments, and you go, is there a breakthrough around the corner? And it turns out there was for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's some pretty rough times on the pathway to trying to build something. And the one thing our category has a problem with at the moment is people launching products that don't meet the standard that some of the existing products do. So rushing products to market is a problem, but I think we'll see that spin out. Consumers will start to gravitate towards the high quality products.
So has Lyres set the benchmark now?
Look, I think our international awards, and I can tell you it's great all day long, but when you've got panels of
Speaks for itself.
Internationally respected judges and, like I said, more than 80 medals now, the evidence is there in front of us. What I will note as well, look, we set about doing something different to most. We decided to create facsimiles or homages to the originals.
Yeah.
Part of our philosophy was that people wanted to drink what they'd already known, loved, and fallen in love with. We wanted that frictionless moment where they could still have whatever their beverage of choice is.
Yeah.
I see you raising a glass of Prosecco there, or a gin and tonic, or a Americano, or even if it's a vermouth over ice, like you have in Spain at sunset during aperitivo.
Yeah.
We wanted to give people those moments and leave them as intact as possible. And that's why we set about recreating the originals.
Yep.
A number of players in the market have created novel products, so personal expressions, and we're seeing providential expressions. So people going, hey, this is the expression of this part of Scotland that I find myself in, and these are the botanicals that I find around me in the highlands on the seashore, and I'm going to blend them together and make an expression of my part of the world.
Yep.
Or I'm an amazing distiller and I'm going to make this beautiful thing by sourcing ingredients from 15 countries, and here's my offering. So the whole category is really quickly breaking into stratas. that mirror the traditional alcohol category, where you've got craft, premium, mainstream, and we're now starting to see value. So in Europe, we've even seen Lidl and Aldi launch their own white label products that are much lower price as well to tap into it. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's developing really, really quickly, the category.
That's awesome. And look, to give you a bit of a story on that, so I ran a networking event here in Sydney, and we greeted everybody with a Negroni on arrival, which was a Lyres, it was the blend. So one of your team came in very kindly, prepared it all, and we greeted them all. And we were doing a bit of a wellness session just before Christmas. So we had it in a gym, and I thought it'd be quite a cool concept for people to be drinking in a gym. And then we basically greeted everybody, said, how are you feeling? And everybody was like fully charged and like, yeah, this is great. This is amazing. And then we introduced Lyres and said, well, to our guests, you're not drinking any alcohol. And some of the faces were like, what? This is ridiculous. But some of them were like, but I've had a really bad day and I feel pissed. And it was just really interesting to see that people felt comfortable with a drink in their hand. And because it was obviously that cocktail glass or the little tumbler glass with a Negroni in it, that placebo effect was kicking in, and they just assumed that it was the strength of the booze, and obviously it wasn't. It was so funny to watch. I thought it was just quite an interesting takeout for me.
Yeah, and look, we've got some theories. We've observed that all around the world a number of times. It's very clear that the brain is a powerful thing, and if you can create something super close to a set of sensory experiences. So it's put in a beautiful and elegant glass. It's got the perfume and the bouquet of a Negroni. It tastes like it. Your brain's going to go, look, I know exactly what's going on here. I'm going to get the party started and dump some endorphins, because that's what happens when you drink booze.
Yeah.
Because I know what's about to happen. So,
Clothes
the
come off.
placebo effect is incredible. And yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to stick someone's brain in an fMRI machine. It's expensive to do, but I'd love to see someone served a Negroni and watch their brain light up and see if it's exactly the same as someone who's served an actual Negroni, and go, right, there's a demonstrable link here between the sensory memory and the change in the body chemistry that happens. It'd be a cool experiment.
That would be very cool. And I remember when we first met, we were talking a lot about, FOMO, which seems like a really old term now. But how some of the younger generations, they want to go out, they want those social media pictures, they want to be filmed, and they want to get clips with their friends, but they don't want to drink, and they want to have something in their hand. And you saw that as quite a big trend coming through as well.
Oh, for sure. And there's sort of two sides to that coin. So the FOMO side it's funny. Humans have been getting together over beverages since we crawled out of caves. I'm sure of it. We met a warring tribe over a stream, and we raised a bison's horn of yak's blood in peace, and we celebrated. So whatever it is, we've been coming together over beverages. And it's part of hospitality, and hospitality is part of what it is to be human. It's so interwoven with our humanity that it's not funny. So in modern times, today's world, in Australia, not in Amsterdam, sadly, but you walk into a bar, you're in a beautiful architecturally designed environment. There's charming people providing you drinks. They're elegantly served. They're things that you cannot create at home for the most part. They're beautifully presented. They're delicious. And you are having a really wonderful experience. Now, people still want all of that, but they don't want the alcohol. For whatever their reason is for not wanting alcohol, be it, they've got a big day tomorrow, they're doing a month-long challenge, they have fitness goals that they want to achieve, whatever it is, they still want the ability to connect with other humans in those environments. And we also have that beautiful Instagram moment, which is, hey, I'm having this experience. People want to share that experience with their networks. That's a very human thing. And then the other side of that coin is, if you do go into that environment and they don't have elegant, sophisticated, non-alcoholic options that match the alcoholic ones that are on sale, you're often left with a physical artifact in your hand, be it a glass of Diet Coke or a club soda, or in Australia it'd be a lemon, lime and bitters. And if you're a female, people are going, oh, she's pregnant. Or if if you're a male, you become, that guy's soft. A lot of people don't want that anxiety of feeling different. And the ability to remove a physical artifact and replace it with one that looks like you're part of the tribe, that deeply rooted need for human connection that lives right at the root of the brainstem, that's the role that non-alcoholic beer, wine and spirits play as well, is the removal of that anxiety and the empowerment of choice for people to still take part, but having it with or without alcohol becomes their choice and not the people that they're with.
There you go.
Wow. So how long did it take from the first thought of this non-alcoholic drink to completion being on the shelf?
About 3.5 years, I would say. So the liquid development took 3 years before we got it right, and then gearing up for production, branding it, and then, working out the business model, founding the business, building the structure, and bringing in investment. That took another 6 months once we had our liquids right. And then we launched in Australia about 18 months ago.
Yeah. And on the brand, actually, Lyres, when I obviously didn't see the spelling, but when I first heard of it, I thought it was Lyres, as in you're telling lies to the audience because you've got a drink in your hand. But it's Lyres. What does that mean? Where does that come from?
Yeah, look, it's actually, I don't actually mind the whole lying piece, and I'll explain why in a second. But this is a bottle of our American malt, which is our homage to bourbon. But this little guy on the top here, this is an Australian lyrebird. Yeah. And what's fascinating about the lyrebird is it's nature's greatest mimic. It can reproduce the bird song of any animal that it hears. It's also incredible in that it can produce very human sounds. So there's a wonderful David Attenborough documentary on YouTube if you want to Google Lyrebird David Attenborough. He looks at the life of the lyrebird for about 5 minutes, and it's reproducing things like mobile phone rings, the sound of a chainsaw, a car alarm. So it's this extraordinary mimic that's natural to Australia, and there's nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world. So for an Australian brand that's built on creating non-alcoholic homages to the originals, we thought the Lyrebird would be a beautiful sort of mnemonic for us to run the brand under. So that's Horatio on the neck of the bottle, and he's a lyrebird wearing a top hat. He's a fancy lyrebird. And then, of course, we have our what we like to call our spirit animals. And all of these animals, they're paying homage to the origin of the original spirit. So given that this is our homage to bourbon, this is a North American black bear. And if I was holding our Amaretti, it would be a sexy Italian fox on the label. So with our labels, we're paying homage to the original. But coming back to Lyres, and which is where we get our brand name from, clearly it's a tribute to the lyrebird, but we also figured that it would be a really powerful bar call. So if someone wants to order a Negroni, for example, like we were talking about before, you can go to the bar, you can ask for a drink that you've always drunk and say, could I get a Lyres Negroni? Or could I get a Negroni and make it a Lyres, please? And I like the fact that it's got this cheeky little twist to it. So it's like there's a secret between you and the bartender. And only the two of you in that bar or at that party need to know that your drink is non-alcoholic. It's no one else's business unless you choose to tell them. So the whole concept of having a little white lie as part of your beverage, we found really appealing as well. Funny story, when I got to Germany, there's no word for white lie or good lie. It doesn't exist in their language.
Really?
They've got something like 15 words for telling a lie, but not one of them says it's a white lie, a small lie that you tell to get a good outcome. It just doesn't exist. So very German. It's either true or not.
Yeah, it's black and white. Wow.
That's it.
So are you seeing trends when you look at your spirit range? You said you got 13 different varieties. Are you seeing trends? For example, is Australia doing more of the vermouths? UK is doing more of the kind of the London Dry. What are you seeing there in the numbers?
Absolutely. So what we have realised, and we're probably the first to realise it given the breadth of our range, is that the world drinks the non-alcoholic category almost exactly like it drinks the alcoholic category.
Right.
So, so a really good example, the United Kingdom's the home of non-alcoholic spirits. It has more brands and it's a high level of penetration into the consumer basket than any other part of the world. But they also drink more gin than any other part of the world. If you look at the traditional spirits category, it's more than 30% of traditional spirit sales are gins. Whereas if you go across the pond and land in New York, it's just over 5%. So you're looking at a market that is 6 times smaller than the United Kingdom. Now, what's really interesting is this whole category sort of comes to life around gin because it's the first thing you make when you have a distillery. You can make a gin or a vodka and you don't need to barrel age it, so you can sell it immediately. If you guys are in Sydney, so if you look at Archie Rose, they've been around for a long time now and they're only just starting to sell their barrel-aged spirits.
Yeah.
So that ties up your cash flow for, half a decade or more in order to deliver something that's barrel-aged. So for the most part, craft distilleries that are working in the de-alcoholization space are making gin or gin-like beverages. And so the vast majority of products that have been available on the market are gin or gin style. So when we turned up leveraging our capability with beverage technology and a lot of the innovative techniques that we use to make our products, when we could deliver very convincing dark spirits into the market like rums and bourbons, we virtually had a market to ourselves. And we very, very quickly took the lead in the United States because we were providing drinks that matched to the drinks profile that the American consumer preferred. So yeah, pretty interesting thing that we found out, and we always suspected that was the case, but we've been able to prove it now.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So you're so stepping away a little bit from Lyres because you're quite an entrepreneur. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, you wear a few hats. Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's a funny one. My dad's he's a builder, runs a steel buildings business. I guess a hell of a salesperson.
Nothing wrong with that.
And then, nothing wrong with that at all. Mum was, I guess she was the Australian equivalent of an Asian tiger mum. Get out there, do sport, practice your musical instruments, study. So, she did push us a little bit. So I guess, origin story, I'm just a kid from the suburbs of Brisbane, so I didn't get any amazing pedigree sitting at the knee of some great entrepreneur. But it's always been something that I've wanted to do ever since I can remember. Graduating high school, I was reading books about business. I was learning about investing and things like that. So, I've always enjoyed the challenge of building businesses. The old link. It's funny when you look at your LinkedIn profile, you go, Jesus, you've done a lot. But it's funny when you get started in business, and I think there's a magic moment when you launch your second business, your mind opens up to seeing opportunities, and there's an exponential effect when you've completed your second business and it's running and it's self-sustaining, and then you look at what the next thing is. Instead of seeing one opportunity, you see 5, and then you see 50, and then you see 5,000. So it's about, I think, being receptive to opportunities and having a sense of self-belief with some success behind you that you can drive something into a space that delivers value for a consumer or in a business-to-business context or otherwise. So it's hard for me to zone in on where it came from. I guess it's just baked into my personality. And then being an economist by training and a marketer my lifetime, we look at the data. And I'm a male and I'm an eldest child as well. So if you were to take a slice of the entrepreneurial community, I fit the archetype for the most part globally. So slight advantages in both of those things as well.
Right. Okay. So what's the stereotype of a male entrepreneur?
A male eldest child entrepreneur. People with siblings and eldest children typically over-index representation
Right.
as entrepreneurs, or people who choose to start their own businesses in particular.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most businesses are still started by men across almost the entirety of the developed world, with the gap closing. But it's still primarily a male-dominated sector, entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that you didn't know anything about making non-alcoholic beverages when you started this company?
Yeah, for the most part, the simple answer is yes. The more complicated answer is I've always had a really, really high level of interest in beverage, partly because that's the clients we serve, and very passionate about beers, very passionate about wines for many, many years. So, used to structure my holidays around going to a wine region, or if I could ever, chat to the sommelier, I'd typically corner the poor guy or girl for a good half an hour talking about the wine.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, guilty.
Yeah. So, I've always had that fascination, and I guess when you get the bug and you understand the artistic and providential expression of a beautifully made beer or wine, it becomes addictive, and you just want to learn more and more and more about it. And you can never know everything. So I guess I came at this business with a decent working knowledge of what I came at this industry with a decent working knowledge of what it is to build a good tasting a good tasting beverage, and what makes for something balanced.
Yep.
And I guess I also knew my limits as well, so I knew to tap in an experienced sommelier to help me create them.
Yeah.
And so how did you know you could do it?
I didn't.
No?
I guess that's part of entrepreneurship. You have a proclivity to making big, bold bets.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come off.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's as simple as that. So I guess it's a mixture of self-belief and the ability to see an opportunity, to know that if you can deliver something, there's definitely going to be an opportunity to put a business there.
So when you were
sort of two things.
So when you were going through it, what do you think? What do you think one of the most valuable mistakes that you've sort of encountered along the way that you've used as like a training tool for yourself?
Yeah, look, I've made a number of investments that have collapsed.
Yep.
Especially during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a small check size angel like myself, you have very, very close proximity to these businesses. So you can see what they do. You can see, was the product market fit right? Was the shape of their business right? Did they burn too much capital too early? Did they not recruit the right people? You make all of those learnings. And then, of course, I've had some failed businesses myself as well. And same things apply. You feel the sting of it a little closer, and you write off, the money that you've burnt trying to get something up and running. But more importantly, you write off the emotional energy and passion you pour into something, and the time that you pour into something. That stings the most.
Yeah.
But they're all learning opportunities on the way through. So failure, and there's people that are much louder with much bigger followings than me saying this. You can go and get as much Gary V failure porn as you want out there. But you have to learn from your mistakes is number one, and number two is you have to get up and try again. So those two things, if you've got that, you're an entrepreneur. And I think your destiny towards a successful outcome, if you just keep doing those two things, it's inevitable that you will have a success if you keep trying and you keep learning from failures on the way through.
I think that's such an awesome message, because I think so many people are just afraid to even start. They don't want to get shouted down, or they don't want to get shot down. So they kind of live with a little bit of regret that they didn't put their neck above the line and start this business or start doing something. But everybody, no one gets it right first time. So you've got to try.
That's for sure. And yeah, and there's been so much work done on what it is to have the founder's mindset and to choose to take that moment where you step away from your nice job or your not so nice job. And one of the most interesting things that I've seen and points of data I've seen is the reason people don't start businesses is because of the level of anxiety around what their family, their spouses, or their friends will think about them if they fail. And it's this fear of failure rather than a passion to build something that is the most likely determinant of if someone makes some major changes to their lifestyle and chooses entrepreneurship as a way forward. So, it's a really, really interesting human dynamic that it's our fear that holds us back more than our passion to build something.
Yeah. What's the plan for Lyres? Because I read in the AFR, you guys raised 16 million last year. I think it was in September. Congratulations on raising money in COVID. What's the kind of next 12, 18 months look like? What's the plan?
Yeah, it's it's the extension of our hypothesis, which is we know that there's this incredible product market fit that we have. So that money, use of funds, it's all to continue to run the business like a software startup. So we will be burning capital on a journey towards becoming cash generative at a point in the future. But for us, 35 country footprint, we need to close the gap. Probably there's 15 more markets that we want to have a presence in and be available. We do believe there's incredible network effects around having an international footprint, and it exponentially gives you a better ROI on your marketing dollar rather than narrowcasting into one market. You're broadcasting to the world. So a lot of that funds has gone on, bringing the right team members in, funding marketing. And one of the really interesting challenges in our category is salience or awareness that the category exists. Interesting versus beer. Beer, there's a level of awareness that non-alcoholic beer exists at around 60% of the population, but awareness that the non-alcoholic spirits category exists sits at around 15%. So we have this incredible gap to close around salience. And if we do, we can quite literally 4x our total addressable market, or TAM, if we can deliver the same level of awareness that beer has in the category. So a lot of that marketing expenditure is going into awareness building activities that, hey, we're an alternative and we're out here for you. And then, of course, we need to upgrade our manufacturing footprint. For the last 12 months, every single month, we've been unable to make enough product to fulfill our orders. We're consistently going out of stock. And it's incredibly frustrating because it's inhibiting our revenue growth.
Yep.
And dealing with, and this is probably one of the key learnings for me, is different from a software company. If you build a piece of code, you can scale it infinitely without too much trouble. And, Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or whatever your platform of choice will scale with you. You just get a slightly larger bill at the end of every month.
Yeah.
But with a consumer product business, with an exponential growth curve and dealing with the hockey stick growth as it emerges, it presents an extraordinary challenge in manufacturing. And it's not something that a rule book's really been written for in terms of how to deal with it. So within the next few months, we're currently manufacturing in 2 locations at the moment, the United Kingdom and in Melbourne, Australia. By the end of this month, we'll be manufacturing in Europe and America as well. So broadening that geographic footprint, which, reduces our cost to serve markets, reduces our carbon footprint by making it closer to the consumer. And it also reduces our COGS as well. So improves profitability, which we can then reinvest. So that big parcel of funds is all earmarked for all of these sorts of activities that take our business from being a beverage startup or scale up more technically, and it moves it into being a true multinational beverage company. So that's our first fundraising round, and we do think we'll be going to market again before this is done. We do need some more firepower in marketing. And the category is getting quite competitive. We now count more than 200 brands of non-alcoholic spirits around the world. And the vast majority of them have entered the space in the last 12 months. So we've got an early start and a whole lot of daylight between us and other brands, but we need to maintain that lead and grow it where possible. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
That's what those funds are for.
So you mentioned before about building your team, and you're obviously expanding all around the world. How do you choose your team?
Yeah, a good question. So a couple of things. Most are scientific, some of them are intuitive.
Yeah.
So the intuitive part is I recruit people for the most part that I've worked with before, that I trust implicitly and I know have a sort of berserk mindset in that they will get shit done and they will make it happen. And they have the same entrepreneurial drive as, I guess, the founders do. So that's really important. The second thing is we need to be able to have fun with those people, because what's the point in working your ass off if you're not having a good time? So everyone sort of fits a culture.
Yeah.
And then the third part, it's the scientific part. And we use a platform called Shortlister. And full disclosure, I'm an investor in it. But I've long been of the belief that getting the psychometric recruitment right for a business is critical. And while someone might be experienced and have the right academic qualifications, it's the latter, the personality profile and the psychological profile, that massively over-indexes the outcomes that they will have for your organisation, rather than their experience and their academic qualifications. So we've been using that since very, very early on, and we ensure people have the proclivity towards being something we like to call a player coach. So that's the roll up your sleeves, get in there, do the sale yourself, or go and run the product yourself, or go into the warehouse and pack boxes yourself if that's what the business needs.
Yeah.
There's nothing beneath you. But more importantly, you know how to do the job implicitly of everyone that reports into you. And what's really important for us in a fast scaling business, you know how to do the job that the business will need you to do in 12 months, which is we're going to double in size. We're close to 50 employees now. I think we just employed number 48. So, as we get to 100 employees, how do they move in a seamless way into a leadership position comfortably? And they're not learning what it is to manage a team. They've done it before, but they've done the player part of the player coaching for the first 24 months, and then they move into the coach part and become our divisional leaders or our regional leaders in time. So that's a little bit of a needle in the haystack to recruit for. But if you've got some pretty good technology tools, as and when you're recruiting people, you can make sure that you have the maximum possible chance of getting that recruitment right on the way through. So it's something I'm really passionate about.
It sounds like it, actually. And how important is it to take people on the journey? Have a vision for Lyres. Where you want to get to. What does it look like? To people to get aligned with, to then be that player coach. I mean, is that something you kind of trickle down from the top? I can imagine the hierarchy is quite flat, but in terms of when you are recruiting people, do you kind of say, look, this is where we want to be. This is what the next 3 or 4 years looks like. This is how we're going to scale. We need you on board, and everyone is going to enjoy the journey, as it were.
Of course. And look, there's far better thinkers than me with regards to what good leadership looks like. What good leadership looks like in a fast growth company, that's probably something that hasn't been explored deeply. And the reason that's a crazy challenge is your culture changes on a monthly basis. You could have double the amount of team members, all introducing their own personalities, all challenging the way things are done on the way through. So from a leadership perspective, it's really important that you have a North Star and say, this is what we're driving towards, this is what we're trying to do here. And that needs to be articulated with frequency, with passion by the founder or founders. And then the second thing that I think is really important is there needs to be a commonwealth amongst all staff. So everyone needs to be incentivized. And look, we've borrowed very heavily from the Silicon Valley playbook. Every single person in the organization has access to shares. So they all feel like they're part of this journey, and every success that we have along the way is, felt at a more visceral level when people are part of the success of the company. So they're motivated not only financially, but having shares in a business is so much more than a financial incentive. It's you own a piece of something, you own a piece of that vision, and you contribute to that vision. So for me, that precipitates some pretty incredible proactivity in your team, and it precipitates some pretty amazing ownership mentality as well, where people run the business like it's their own, and you get so much more from them whilst taking so much less emotional energy from them. If they love what they're doing because they own part of something, then it's not work. It becomes play. And for me, they're two really important things. And for many years now, I've not started a business that doesn't have that as the working model. And then the last part of it, which is really something that's quite difficult to do as well, is how do you integrate people from different cultural backgrounds? So we have quite a large PRC or mainland China team that do business very differently to how our US team does or our European team does as well. So there's incredible challenge of integrating people across different cultures as well. And most businesses have a monoculture. They're typically demonstrably Australian or Dutch or US, and that part of the culture permeates. But we've grown so fast and we're so global that there's a real global culture here, and it's something that I've personally never witnessed before, both in existing international businesses and startups as well. So it's something new that we're wrestling with, and it's actually quite cool to see the ownership that people take of success in other geographies. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and I think we'll start to see more businesses that look like ours, and we'll start to crystallize, I guess, a bit of a leadership and management best practice in the coming years, because I think with the communications tools, the proclivity of the investment community to support businesses like ours, we're going to see a lot more of this sort of stuff happening, and inevitably academics will want to study it and help us understand why these businesses are successes or failures, as the case may be, on the way through.
Yeah. I love your North Star comment as well, because you said earlier on about there's so many things that you guys want to do and where you want to take the business. Now, as a salesperson, you follow anything that's shiny. So, and there's always deals, there's always opportunity. And I think, to your point, if you're entrepreneurial in mind, you've got a bit more experience, you can look at opportunity and see something that maybe someone that's a bit more junior or less seasoned isn't going to see. So to have that North Star really enables you to go, that's a great one, but we're going to park that for the moment and we're going to move forward because that's where we are. But we'll kind of circle back if we can do. On the kind of silver bullet side of things, and I guess taking COVID into point, I mean, is there a place for influencers with Lyres? Could you be giving some celebrities a couple of cases? I mean, not us, no one knows who we are yet, but does that, again, putting your marketing hat back on, but do they still have a place?
Yeah, and you can argue how effective they are. And again, there's people far more skilled than myself in the marketing space that can do it. Influencers versus micro-influencers. Then you've got
what's the difference?
Platforms. Micro-influencers, crash course, smaller communities, but typically more engaged. So up to 10,000 or 20,000 followers is typically the cutoff. And then you consider influencers at a higher level than that.
Right.
Blue tick versus no blue tick is probably another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Look, micro-influencers are, the evidence is emerging that they're typically a more powerful marketing pathway, and that's why we're seeing a lot of brands embrace portfolios of micro-influencers rather than staking their fortunes to one macro influencer to sort of say that, the Kardashians and the Kanyes of the world. So there's that, and then there's the emergence of new platforms. So I think before we started the podcast, we were talking about TikTok, and TikTok's become yet another platform. And then if you take a global context, like we need to as a global business, you see even more platform fragmentation. So you've got the Weibo platform in China that you need to get on top of. And there's different social media platforms in Russia and India than the ones that we're used to in terms of Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, that you need to wrestle with also. So that's a very long way of answering your very simple question is, yes, they do have a place. What's interesting about influencers is you can directly track return on investment with some tools that are available these days. Whereas, you go and get a Super Bowl ad for yourself, it's very difficult to track exactly how effective that's been.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the advantage of digital marketing. So I think it's probably started to over-index the investment in digital marketing because we can, as marketeers, create a very clear ROI equation. And we can track the direct sales outcomes that an influencer has through their stories or their posts to resulting in a sale through your e-commerce ecosystem as well. So, they do have a place. In today's world, they've become far more important than traditional advertising. I think the 30-second TV commercial is dead. Thank you, Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who watches YouTube ads and doesn't skip them. As the marketing landscape changes, the channels that we need to use to reach consumers change considerably as well. And influencers are probably the most visible part of that change that's been undertaken on the way through. And they do have their importance on the way through. So for us, we make extensive use of influencers at Lyres. And we target people that, they might be mixologists and are respected within the bar community. They may be lifestyle experts and looking to reduce calories or reduce reliance on alcohol. They may be a car enthusiast and, someone who loves Ferraris or Maseratis. And they might want to have an elegant drink halfway through an evening, but then go out and drive for another 2 hours after that drink as well. So there's any number of ways to tie our brand to the moments or the occasions for our brand to exist in. And it's not the typical linear, I'm a bartender, drink this. There's so many other ways to do it using influencer networks as well.
So on that note, when was the big sort of blowout moment for Lyres? Was there a moment where it just really started to take off and then, you had that hockey stick sort of growth?
Yeah, sure.
Can you pinpoint it?
March last year, the beginning of lockdown in most of the world. So we saw this incredible explosion in our e-commerce sales. I'm talking, triple digits and quadruple digits in some markets, month on month.
Wow.
All of a sudden, we had a population with a lot more time on their hands in a domestic environment, craving the occasions that they used to have outside. So we saw the rise of in-home mixology. And I'm not sure if it was one of our team or another member of the community gave it a name, but we saw the rise of a new channel. We've got the on-premise, which is the pub. We've got the off-premise, which is your liquor stores. And it's been termed the in-premise, where people are recreating bar-like experiences in their home. So you've got people upskilling their ability to mix cocktails and create delicious beverages in their home, either for themselves or when they're hosting the small, safe number of people that they're allowed to host in their homes based on whatever the regulation is at the time. And we found that people wanted to do that, again, like most of the things we've spoken about, with or without alcohol. So it's benefited the alcohol community, or the alcohol-containing spirits, wine and beer community, but it's over-indexed the non-alcoholic spirits containing non-alcoholic beers, non-alcoholic wines community as well. So that was really that moment. And I think it's simply to do with the fact that consumer behavior was changed fundamentally and virtually immediately. And it really kickstarted the entire category. And the growth of the sector since that moment has been much, much faster than the traditional categories. And because we invested so heavily in e-commerce from early on, we really benefited from it on the way through.
Awesome. I know talking to a lot of our friends, I think when it kicked off here in Australia, there was, I think, maybe on a Tuesday night, you'd sit there and you'd crack a bottle of wine and you'd go, it's only Tuesday, we've got the rest of the week yet. So I know, this year and the back end of last year, a lot of our friends are saying, well, I'm not going to drink Monday through Thursday. And I've even done it a few times where I've cracked a few of these on a Wednesday, because you just want that thing in your hand, and a Barocca and a Hydrolite or a Coca-Cola is not going to do it. This is probably more healthy than a Coca-Cola anyway. So, I think we're going to see a lot of that trend as well, where it's not going to be the binge effect, but where people are going to curb the enthusiasm during the week, and then they're going to have some of their favorite, glasses of wine, beers, whatever it kind of looks like at the weekend.
Yeah, it's the alcoholic equivalent of a flexitarian, where, you do meat-free Monday and all of a sudden you're a vegan or you're a vegetarian for one day a week. I certainly think we're going to see the rise of flexible relationships with alcohol. I'm doing dry Jan. I suspect you guys might be as well. It's really fascinating, actually, that it's 1 in 4 people in Ireland are doing dry Jan. So the mythology of the drunken Irish man and woman is completely obliterated. That public has changed so quickly, its relationship with alcohol. It's not funny. And there's been a few reports, but everyone in almost every market is consciously choosing to drink less. And when they do drink, they're consciously choosing to drink better. So, yeah, it's a really interesting tailwind that pushes our business and businesses like us forward. But there's a lot to be said for that. We call it the threshold moment. It's the end of the day where working life ends and home life and leisure begins. And it could be a glass of wine. It could be a gin and tonic. But if you still want that moment and you don't want the alcohol, there's now options for you. So you can still have your G&T with your partner and close the laptop and start your home life. And you don't need to sacrifice on that moment, or for the most part, the taste and the whole theatre and pageantry of that moment that you've created in your home. That's still there and available to you as well. So you can keep having those things that make life worth living.
Yeah. Well, mate, I gave your espresso martinis a bit of a nudge over COVID, and I got some amaretti because I am partial to an amaretto sours. So I shall let you know how that goes.
The 90s called. They want their cocktail back. So nice one, John.
I'll put a skivvy on as well.
Yeah. But you'd be surprised. The amaretti sour has been an absolute sleeper for us. There's so many people that love an amaretti sour, and we're bringing it back.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I had one on the weekend.
Far out. So I'll tell you what then, I'm going to have 2 more questions before we wrap up, because I know it's your morning and you're a busy man. Who's like the ideal, if you could, we do have a global audience here. We've got people in America and the UK and all over the place. Who would be your ideal partner be? If you wanted to partner with a business or someone, who would it be?
Yeah, it's good question. There's not an easy singular answer to that, because there's so many different people that come into our brand for different reasons.
Yeah.
We've just kicked off a global relationship with WW, or Weight Watchers.
Yep.
So our drinks are, significantly, we're talking, 1/5 of the calories of the alcoholic originals, because the vast majority of calories comes from ethanol. It's the highest caloric substance we put in our body. There's a reason it catches on fire when you put a naked flame to it, because it contains so much energy in it. But yeah, so, that global relationship with Weight Watchers is, our brand is there for people that are looking to make healthier choices, not in the reduction of alcohol space, but in the reduction of calorie space, to have a more balanced, lose weight or maintain a healthy weight. Then there's, love to work with a Maserati globally or something. There's a beautiful elegance to that brand that I like to think is reflected in ours. And it's very inelegant to drink drive. So I think there's some very powerful messaging there. very ungentlemanly to endanger others. And I think Maserati would agree with that. And then, you're looking at other brands, other businesses, other partners. The businesses that deliver occasions. So, if you're in the in-flight lounge in an airline, that's the moment that we want to be there for. We want to enable that moment of celebration that a holiday is beginning, and deliver it for people with their choice of alcohol, or we're there for them if they don't want alcohol. So, all those sorts of partners in those really special moments in life where there's a beverage offer at the center point of, or it's the capstone to that moment. That's where we want to be. And they're the sort of partners that we're actively looking for on the way through.
Awesome. That's very good. And then my last question is, obviously we're not in Australia, so you're in Amsterdam. You've got a table booked for 4 people. Who would be your 3 guests that you'd invite and why? And they can be dead or alive.
Ooh, wow. Okay. This is rough. Okay. I'd love to Barack Obama, because I think that would be a fascinating chat, and a man that achieved so many extraordinary things. I'd love to chat to Joan of Arc. And understand how a woman in a time of women's severe disadvantage managed to lead a military and liberate a people. I think that would be extraordinary. And here's a good one. I'd love to chat to Jesus Christ.
First time he's come up, but okay.
Yeah.
JC.
Yeah, and go. Yeah, JC, and say, dude, is this all stories, or are you truly a sky wizard? Let's have a look.
A sky wizard. That's fantastic.
That's very Peter Griffin-esque, that I think.
Yeah. Because I reckon that'd be a fascinating chat. It's like, nah, man, I was just trying to preach some messages of peace, and it got out of hand.
Awesome.
And say, hey, dude, do you know the influence you've had for the last 2 millennia on the world? He's like, whoa.
You're not going to believe this, JC. Let me show you some buildings.
Yeah. And check out this dude and his funny hat. Seriously. This was you. You started this.
Oh, that's great.
Brilliant. Well, Mark,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to let you rock and roll, mate, and crack on with your day. Really, really appreciate you taking the time talking to us, especially over Zoom in Amsterdam. Thank you for bringing this into my life, actually. Yeah. It's been fantastic. Really enjoy it.
It truly is.
And love supporting it, and we'll continue to fly the flag and be customers for as long as we can do. So well done. Really exciting journey ahead.
So what are the social media handles, and where do we get your stuff from in Australia? And
I guess globally, Lifestyle Pirates are going to go global, I think. So jump onto lyres.co or lyres.com. We service 20 markets, so you can find Lyres products through that website. If you're in Australia, we're available in Dan Murphy's, Coles Local, at discerning bars and establishments where sophisticated and elegant drinks are served. And if they don't stock it, make sure you ask for it. So ask for Lyres. And I'm truly grateful that you guys have put the time aside to have a chat to me and about our crazy journey. And I'm so delighted also that you're enjoying our products.
It's fantastic.
It's awesome. A pleasure. And I look forward to an Amaretto Sours when you can finally get back.
That, my friend, is a mandate, and that is happening.
Lovely.
Awesome.
All right, gents.
We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.